Hey everyone, welcome back to Out of Spec Guide. I'm Max and I'm joined by Out of Spec friend Francie, who hosts the Out of Spec podcast. Hello.
Hello, Max. Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me over to the Out of Spec Guide. I'm excited to be here today. It's
Yeah,
great.
great to have you on. This, of course, right on this channel, we focus so much on like the EV basics and just starting out. But people who want to keep up with EV news and follow all of the nerd stuff and all the in-depth things, you've been doing a great job covering on the podcast channel. So it's always interesting. Like I always learn a lot when I listen to that. But today, Francie, I thought it'd be interesting to start a new format on this channel where we're going to go over news of the week for you as an EV buyer, prospective EV buyer. You're looking at an electric car and you want to keep up with like, okay, you don't need to know someone built a battery plant here. There's some new battery chemistry. You just want to know like what products are coming to market, what kind of news is out. And I wanted to start, Francie, this week for the first version of this format with Kia, because Kia had a lot of stuff to announce this week.
Yeah, they sure did. It seems like Kia really had quite a ball in the EV space this week. So happy to jump through. And I think this perspective of taking, kind of the typical point of view of someone who's looking to just buy a car that has what they need, that might be straightforward when you're not in the EV sector, and bringing it into the EV sector is a great approach. So really happy to be here to help guide some of our folks. And of course, if you're into deep dives on the news, like Max said, you can head on over to the Out of Spec podcast when you have a chance. So let's dive
Abs-
in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think no better place to start than with Kia followed Hyundai this week in announcing they're in the North American charging standard. So no big surprise. Ownership, in case you were unfamiliar, Hyundai Motor Group, like as an umbrella, has Kia and Genesis as sub-brands. So Kia on their vehicles is going to have Tesla's North American charging standard, meaning that owners will have access to more than 12,000 Tesla superchargers. Fairly familiar story if you've seen similar announcements from other automakers. At this point, it's kind of like who isn't in the Tesla bandwagon in North America, which is great, I think, because, right, Tesla's chargers are reliable, they're great. So that's exciting. The big news here is that, like, it's going to first happen for the Kia EV6. In terms of the EV6 being one of the first vehicles to have the port built in, like Tesla port built in. That's going to happen in Q4 2024, according to them. And then there will be an adapter also available in Q1 2025, which is interesting. Like that to me is like, you'd think you'd want the adapter earlier, but maybe it's a supply issue. I'm not sure. But what do you think, Francie, of like Tesla charging on Kia vehicles? You excited?
I am excited. I think like you said, it's a question of when, not really if. I believe for automakers to say, yep, we're going over to the NACS connector. And then really what comes next is, okay, well, what's your plan? How are you going to do it? So interesting that they're starting with the EV6. I do think it's curious that the adapter will come after the native NACS port. So that's interesting. I do feel like there are a bit of issues in getting the adapter supplies that I've heard from other people in the space, whether they're building chargers or getting ready or than the automaker space. So I think it's pretty cool. Do you know, I mean, what do you think, Max? Is it worth waiting for the EV6 to have that port instead of, the other Kia options or whatever else is out there?
I did a video with Kyle's dad, Out of Spec Dave, on this topic. Should you wait generally? And I think that for most people, honestly, no. I mean, if you are okay to wait years because your electric car has a different outlet, that's cool. But I think the adapters, while not a perfect solution, are going to be okay for most people. And it's not like we're going to have, I mean, a lot of charging stations, including Tesla superchargers, are offering options for CCS vehicles to plug in there. So basically, like, if you have an adapter either way, you have stations with multiple cables, I think we're going to figure this out. We're not quite at a unified level where, like, okay, you have to wait for the North American charging standard. Maybe for some people they want to. I get it, right? Like it'll make the vehicle in the long term in terms of resale more appealing. But I think it's not something that like is a must. One thing I think is interesting here too is in the press release they say that it's going to be through the Kia Connect app. So this is one of the earliest instances I've seen of an automaker saying, "Oh, we're integrating Tesla charging into like our app." So unlike right now where what people do within the Magic Dock stations with an adapter, they use the Tesla app. You're going to be using the like built-in functions of your car and the Kia Connect app to access, find Tesla superchargers and pay for them. They say auto pay, so that's cool.
Very cool. Yeah, I'd love to see that the interaction and the interoperability standpoint from Kia and Tesla. I bet that's really interesting on their side of things as well.
Yep, very exciting, and I'd love to, see how that experience shakes out for customers. I'm hoping with the Kia Connect app, it's as seamless as it should be. But one of my beefs with Kia as a brand is, as great as their products and the vehicles are, I don't always find their software to measure up. Next thing that I wanted to talk about, though, Francie, Kia EV9. This is exciting. It's a three-row SUV. We don't have many electric versions of this. We have like technically the Model Y and the Mercedes EQB, but those are both really small. The third row is like tiny. You have to have like, I think, dolls basically in the third row. But then you've got the R1S, the Rivian, which I think, Francie, you are recently reserved the truck version of. That's a really cool, exciting vehicle. This is going to be finally another option from Kia on the market.
Yeah, I think this is great. That three-row SUV option is definitely something that, like you hinted at or said, is missing from the array of EVs. And I've gotten questions from folks who haul their families and haul all their family's stuff that are curious, like, how can I actually get the size that I need, but I want to go electric? And so this is great to see, like the EV estimated range and everything. And also, yeah, three-row SUV that's a proper three rows, because there's not a bunch of huge options on the market.
Yeah, it's great to see. It's interesting in the compromises or the choices it's making. So 304 miles of range, that's like a big press release advertised figure here. That's applying to the large battery version. So that would be the light with the rear wheel drive. So it's going to be like the weakest motor, 0 to 60 time, I believe, is going to be, I think, in the like 7-ish second range. Not that quick. It probably won't be a problem for a lot of people, but it's not going to be like anything like a Rivian R1S with its quad motor or even the dual motor setup. Not that it needs to be, just offering something different. If you get the base model, which starts at $54,000 though, Francie, it's 230 miles of range, which I feel like some people would probably like have their doubts about. The thing I would say, though, is that this is built on eGMP. It will charge very quickly, like the Kia EV6 already does. So when you go to the right kind of fast charger on road trips, you actually can charge up really quickly. I think that helps make up for the fact that the range won't be great. But still, it's interesting to note, like 230 miles of range, that might be a little low to some people.
Yeah, that's a good point of the trade-off where you can, perhaps charge up fast, because that's really where the range starts to come in, those long distances. If you're commuting around and you need all the space and you want that lower cost, 230 miles might be fine. But again, you have to think of where you're going to be taking this. If you're taking the road trips to grandma's house or whatever it is quite often, and that means you have to go for the most expensive option to get that, and it's still just 300 miles of range, which is pretty good. But that's something to consider, definitely. And to know the different payoffs, like you just pointed to, of charge time or charge rates versus the range is something important that is unique also for EV consumers to consider.
Yeah. One more thing I want to mention, Francis, that I think is cool is like the 300-mile range trim, that one that's more expensive because larger battery. It is rear wheel drive. That's part of how it's more efficient. So I think it's cool that they give you the option to select a rear wheel drive, non-all wheel drive car for that efficiency and saving a little bit of money. It won't be that big of a price increase to go to an all wheel drive version as compared to the battery. It's like $5,000, right, to upgrade the battery, and it seems like it's more like $3 to $4 grand to upgrade to all-wheel drive. It's cool that they give you that option. Like with a Rivian, it's like, oh, I guess you want all-wheel drive all the time. A lot of automakers have figured with large SUVs, we're just going to only do dual motors. Tesla, until recently, with the Model Y, right, only had a dual motor option. Model X, the high-end SUV, is still only a dual motor all-wheel drive. So it's cool that, like, for efficiency and saving a buck, you could get a rear wheel drive one.
There's definitely a lot of options here that I think a lot of folks will appreciate, especially considering, yeah, they might have different needs, different preferences, and the EV9 has a lot of different options. You're right.
Yeah, it's just, they're giving you more flexibility, more stuff in the market, which is nice. If you live in a snowy climate, you maybe want all-wheel drive, but maybe you don't need it.
Yeah.
Next, Francie, the Kia EV5. This one is sadly not seemingly one we're going to get in the US, or at least we don't know anything about that yet. Kia Europe had a press release this week. This was part of their EV Day, all of their announcements. But EV5, Francie, is going to be kind of like EV9. It's a boxy SUV. It's just smaller. So it is, as they call it, designed and engineered to meet the needs and desires of millennial families. So that's cool. But what do you think, Francie, of like this smaller, bit cheaper SUV compared to EV9?
It does seem like it will be in definitely a different part of the, the market and appeal to different folks. Interesting that they're going for that millennial family, which is, I don't know, I just think that's cute. But it won't be over in the US, you say, so that's a bit wah wah. But it does seem like it would be competitive, right? You might not need all the space of the EV9, and this kind of brings it down a little bit, but still would have the space for a family. So I think that is a pretty good option. Again, they're really, it does seem like they're playing across the board, Kia, with their EV offerings, and this one does seem like it would be pretty attractive to those families that don't need all of that space. And so, what about the specs? What are the range, especially if I'm considering, do I want to go big with the EV9? Well, I guess I wouldn't because I'm in America. But yeah, what are the differences that we see here?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Like they configured it, unlike EV9, Francie. This is more configured for like non-US markets in the sense that like it is a bit more modest on battery sizing. Both sizes of batteries are smaller, and 64 versus a 76 kilowatt hour standard battery in EV9, and 88 versus an almost 100 kilowatt hour battery pack. So I think those are all net usable capacities. But basically, what that's translating to is they say the range and these kilometer units that I've heard a little bit about. I think 530 kilometers is like 200 and well, if I do the math here, in miles, it's like 330 miles. So this is on China's light duty vehicle test cycle, though, so that's optimistic. So if that seems like it's better than EV9, I think it actually won't be much better. It's a smaller vehicle, but it is substantially smaller batteries. So it just seems like overall, right, a little bit less battery, less power. Interestingly, the single axle, like non all-wheel drive version is front wheel drive, which like is for people who care about performance or just, kind of the driving dynamics, that's a bit of a downside. Again, this seems configured for just to be a bit more like a bit cheaper, a bit smaller. In terms of pricing, I think they're aiming to have this in the 50,000 euro zone, but it seems like the production being taking place in China and Korea is a big part of them not offering in the US because it wouldn't be eligible for the Inflation Reduction Act tax credit.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a interesting part to consider. And in terms of, yeah, the front wheel drive and not the other options, I guess you say that's, a way that they could cut the price a little bit, which is still, at a 50,000 euro, but perhaps that will fit into a family's needs and they don't maybe need the power and performance that the other options would offer.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I think a lot of it comes down to packaging because I don't know if like the front wheel drive versus rear wheel drive, I'm not a vehicle engineer, is cheaper to do, but it maybe it's just how they've chosen to package the vehicle. But it speaks to the fact that yeah, it's a little bit of a different market they're aiming this car for. I think it would be cool to see it in the US, but it's just not how that's seeming to shake out. Speaking of tax credit, I forgot to mention this, Francie. EV9, interestingly, will not be built initially in West Point, Georgia, meaning it's not going to get the tax credit off the bat. It probably will eventually, but at the moment, they're building the ones for the US in South Korea. So the Georgia production will happen later.
Interesting. Okay, good to note, especially if folks are considering what will fit in their budget and what kind of incentives are offered.
Yes, because EV9, all of it, all of the models fall under $80,000. So it's really, I think, going to be super relevant for folks. Then let's talk about future stuff, Francie. Now, future stuff, I always have to contend it's the future. Some of it's undefinite. We don't know what's going on. They've got a lot of pictures here we'll go through, but there's two upcoming vehicles that are exciting, the EV3 and the EV4. If you haven't noticed, Francie, they have this naming scheme convention, which just seems to be, let's fill up all the numbers in the world and make that our EV names. So Francie, EV3, it's odd numbered, and it's smaller than the EV5, which like we said is smaller than EV9. Where is EV7? They said something about that initially when they launched their first EV, the EV6, which is on sale here. We don't know much about it. So Without worrying about that too much, Francie, EV3 looks really cool. It is a subcompact SUV. We're thinking like Volvo EX30 kind of size here. Concept looks very cute, very rugged and or boxy and futuristic, following their like kind of design philosophy. I have to stress, Francie, especially on this interior stuff here, this is a concept. A lot of this is like very speculative. This is very early days. It's probably not going to look like this in production.
Yeah, that's something definitely to keep in mind when they come out with concept cars, and it gives us an idea of, what they're kind of dreaming of and working towards, in their designs and everything. But what actually comes can be totally distinct. And that steering wheel was pretty cool, though. I do say I love to see what folks can, dream up. And it does look very sleek, but it's not a promise of what's to come. It's a cool option. You're right. It is, this EV3 a little bit smaller, more compact, which a lot of folks prefer. So it'll be interesting. It's also interesting that they're kind of counting backwards, or maybe not exactly even in order with the EVs as they're coming out.
No, you're right, Francie. They're kind of jumping all over the place. They started with the EV6 that they launched, and it's a great vehicle. That we like it out of spec a lot. Then they went to EV9, and now they're going back to like cover the bases of 4 and 3. I don't know what they're doing, but it's a strategy. This is, I think, going to be a very relevant vehicle, though, nonetheless exciting. So that's EV3, and then Francie, EV4, if we're counting up again. This is just getting. I don't know how I'm going to keep track of this, but EV4, Francie, is going to be like a sleeker kind of sedan profile, as they call it. This concept, to me, based off its like design and look, seems a little bit higher than a sedan, but that seems to be the trend in EVs because of the way they package batteries and also consumer preferences for vehicles. Not a lot of people, especially in the US, want vehicles that are super low to the ground, so they're lifting this up a bit. I guess you can take it on trails and stuff, but EV4 will be more of a sleek sedan profile than the EV3 will be. Similar kind of interior with that hexagon-ish esque wheel, and
Yes.
yeah.
Very cool looking wheels, cool looking designs. Again, concept, but and it's fun to look at. And they kind of this sleek and futuristic style. I see them, perhaps calling to similar design ideas of like the Model 3, the Tesla Model 3, and the Ioniq 6. So, kind of trying to fit something right in there as well. And sitting close to the ground, I do. Kyle loves that. Really just as low to the ground as possible. But some folks, you're right, aren't totally into the on the ground sport mode that's possible. So that would probably include a lot more folks that would be interested in this kind of sedan that is, not the classic sedan. We're moving towards this more futuristic style with EVs more and more, the spaceship versions of our earthbound cars.
Absolutely. Doesn't look like, unfortunately, it'll be a liftback based off the cut lines I'm seeing. Seems like it'll have a conventional opening trunk, which, like, I'm a big fan of liftbacks. Like, I drive a Polestar 2, which looks like a sedan, but has a liftback, meaning that, like, I can use more of the cabin space and integrate that. This looks like it'll have a traditional trunk, but it's all concept stuff. It's all early on. Very sharp looking, that kind of Kia look. And yeah, pricing wise, Francie, we're looking for these. I think they are hoping for between $35,000 and $50,000. It's very early days, though.
It'd be cool to see what they're able to put out for the $30,000 range compared to, what we see, which is mostly around 50 or more in the EV space, and maybe what they're capable, what their techniques are to cut those costs, and just, what they're able to offer for that price point to let more folks be able to adopt these.
Yeah, we'll have to see. In terms of production, I don't know if there's any plans to produce these in the US, so incentives, all of that. It's honestly just too early to talk about, but wanted to introduce those as news topics. One more news thing that came up. It sounds like Kia is going to do an EV2 that they've announced. They haven't, Francie, this is the most speculative of them yet, released any official imagery here. So we're here on Autocar's site showing they've got like a rendering. This is all speculative. This is not any official Kia materials. What Kia has said, Francie, officially is they're aiming at a target price of like 25,000 euros, launch of 2026. And this, right, of course, would make it a pretty affordable car. It's going to be pretty small and pretty city focused. What do you think?
Interesting. I will be very happy to see if they're able to hit that 25,000 euro point. And it seems like it would really move into the space where ICE cars are, that lower price range, and smaller. I mean, that's just a mock up image that's not based on anything like you said, but I don't know, like a mini that is popular in Europe that can get on the smaller streets and stuff and really be that convenient commuter where you don't need all the space. You don't need the three rows like the EV9. And so I'm very interested to see what happens. Of course, we don't have all the info, but the EV2, maybe it'll be just too small in a good way. That's exciting. Yeah, very cool. There's a lot of news from Kia. I mean, they are really giving a lot of the previews into what they're working on, and then of course, true realized news that we'll see, like with the EV6 and the NACS port. So it's cool to focus in on Kia for this. They've had a lot of news this week. So to get this digestible Kia bout of things, especially if you've been a Kia fan before and you've just been waiting to go electric with them or see what comes from them. So a cool mini deep dive. Thanks, Max.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining me, Francie. Kia, is such an interesting brand to follow in the EV space. Like you were saying, there may be Kia fans, hopefully not the Kia boys, those people on TikTok who were hijacking cars that had a bug with their keys. That's sort of that was an interesting news story from last year that I think they've patched up by now, but that was unfortunate that people's cars were getting stolen. But the Kia fans and new Kia fans who are come along in the electric age, where Kia has just debuted and kind of launched a really exciting electric presence with EV6. It's just great to see more of this stuff. I'm most excited, Francie, just in the immediate moment about EV9 details. One more thing I forgot to mention for the nerds who may have made it this far: EV2, 3, 4, 5, everything we talked about that's a lower number than EV6 will technically not be 800 volt charging. What that means is they will charge slower. They're going to be 400 volt. That's what it seems like we know now. So that's an interesting cost decision. I don't know if it'll be a big issue because there's plenty of cars that are 400 volts, and because they're efficient enough, they still charge okay. It just means they won't charge as quickly. We're looking at like 25 minutes versus, right, like 18 minutes. So not a world of difference. But Francie, yeah, thank you for joining me for this first kind of installment of this. Early days, so people, like, if you feel like anything's like with the format we can tighten up or something, or I can change, please let me know. But Francie, great to have your take and perspective on these things, and people definitely should check out Autospec Podcast if they want to learn more about the ins and outs of EV world as they happen.
Yeah, thanks for the plug, Max. Really interesting to see, what kind of common threads are running through Kia right now and how they're approaching their whole EV transition. So thanks for having me on. And yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. This is a cool news digest. So like Max said, if there's anything you'd like to see, definitely let them know.
Yeah, let me know. Next week we'll try to do this again with different news stories. Probably not Kia related, but good start for this. Again, thanks, Francie. And yeah, see you in the next one. Bye.